Investors cry foul of a leader snub at a crucial industrialization summit in Zimbabwe. We'll be looking at that story in a lot of detail and plenty more content from Zimbabwe as well in the next half hour. Welcome to this edition of Global Business Africa. I'm Ramanyang. Here's what's coming up. African central banks are stepping in to smoothen out volatility as their currencies fall against the dollar. And farmers and experts exchange best practice tips at an annual strawberry festival in Morocco. Right, we'll be getting around to the business of yummy fruits a little later, but let's start in Zimbabwe. Regional leaders are meeting over there for the Southern African Development Community Summit. Key discussions are centering around industrialization. That said, industry players are key in the sector transformation are angry because they say they've been completely left out of crucial consultations. Here's Farai Mokutuya with more from Harare.
At a political level, SADC has realized it must industrialize or die. But the political commitments have not been backed up by the requisite action, at least as far as business is concerned.
We have seen a them and us syndrome between public sector and private sector.
A meeting of more than 100 captains of industry from across the region says it was not consulted in the formulation of a strategy for industrialization due to be tabled to regional leaders this week. This despite being key stakeholders.
Private sector involvement and contribution is important to underpin any policy direction that should be leading to sustainable industrialization. Industrialization needs critical infrastructure. Infrastructure that is of 20-year, 30-year horizon. That's long tenure money. And it really thrives on PPPs. PPPs are crafted between governments and private sector.
The SADC Extraordinary Summit plans to strategically position member states to tap into an estimated 800 million SADC and COMESA market. However, trade remains bogged down by tariff and non-tariff barriers, which have restricted regional trade to just 12%. SADC also needs to address the gap between South Africa, the continent's most developed economy, and the other 14 member states.
Why, as SADC, don't we look and say, how far has South Africa gone in what spheres? What are the areas that we think maybe we can improve on? Because if we speak industrialization in its totality in a very general manner, then we're not going to get far. We need to be specific about what it is that we would like to focus. But if we all want to keep it all to ourselves, we don't have the money, we don't have the resources to do it.
The solution lies in converting regional integration from mere rhetoric to action on the ground. The SADC summit underway in this hotel behind me is a crucial first step in getting the ball rolling. Farai Mokutuya, CCTV, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Some M&A news now. Atlas Mara, co-founded by former Barclays CEO Bob Diamond, is poised to invest a further $22.5 million in Rwanda's banking sector. Atlas Mara is currently in talks to make the investment in Banque Populaire du Rwanda to merge it with the existing Rwandan bank, BRD Commercial Bank. Atlas Mara officials say they plan to eventually increase their ownership stake of BPR to 70% before then moving ahead with the merger. The company says the move would create Rwanda's largest single bank by branch locations and the second largest bank by assets, with combined assets of about $305 million. Atlas Mara was founded in 2013, and it says it plans to become Sub-Saharan Africa's leading bank. It has interests across 7 African countries at the moment. Now let's focus on currencies. The Kenyan shilling fell to a 3-year low in Monday trading due to the continued slowdown in the country's tourism sector. The currency fell to 94.40, 94.50 to the dollar after closing at 94.20, 94.30 to the dollar last week Friday. Now the shilling has been battered by a slowdown in foreign exchange revenues from tourism after a number of militant attacks which have scared off foreign visitors. Traders say the shilling is unlikely to stabilize unless the central bank offers support by selling dollars in the market as it has in the past week. Some traders, in fact, are actually predicting that the shilling will go down to as low as 95 to the dollar, maybe even more. It's expected that dollar demand from the energy sector, especially right at the end of the month, could further weaken the Kenyan currency. Also in West Africa, Nigeria's central bank is cracking down on non-performing loans in a bid to prevent a repeat of the nation's $4 billion bank bailout crisis. in 2009. Africa's largest economy has been severely affected by the sharp decline in global oil prices. That, of course, is the country's main export. The flow on effect has resulted in a currency crisis and strained government finances, while at the same time hurting the cash flow of companies with foreign currency loans. Now, this plan requires banks to give bad debtors 3 months from the 1st of May to start servicing their loans again. Now, failure to do that will result in them being named and shamed in the local media and being banned from currency and government debt markets. The Central Bank of Nigeria, however, did not give an estimate of the current level of non-performing loans as yet. Now, across sub-Saharan Africa, frontier currencies are taking quite the beating, but for very different reasons. You see, in the year to date, the dollar is up about 4% or so in currencies like Zambia's kwacha, the Kenyan shilling, and the South African rand. On the other hand, it's gained up to 8% against the naira, nearly 20% against Ghana's cedi. Let's get a look at frontier and emerging market currencies from London. Miriam Bemard is live there right now. Miriam, let's start with the Kenyan shilling. It's accelerated its decline against the greenback over the last week. What's the outlook for the local unit through to the end of the year?
Rama, well, we could see it depreciate even further, especially if the U.S. economy becomes stronger. We have to remember that the strength of the U.S. dollar globally has very much put pressure on currencies like the Kenyan shilling. The only thing that could actually slow down the shilling slide is really a central bank intervention. Just last week, the bank said that it was monitoring the foreign exchange market and had enough reserves to cushion the exchange rate against these short-term shocks and volatility. But again, if we see the U.S. dollar continue to outperform others, coupled with an elevated but seasonal demand for foreign exchange from the local corporate sector, the shilling will remain under pressure for the medium to long term this year.
Indeed. Let's pick up on one of the arguments you made there, the United States economy. And of course, the Fed rate setting committee does meet in the next 24 hours or so, and what they say has an enormous impact on the dollar's strength. What should we expect to hear from them?
Well, you know what, certainly not as much as we're expecting to hear. You know, U.S. data has been weak lately with both non-farm payroll and retail sales figures not as high as expected. This weakness, coupled with more somber comments from Fed officials, has actually caused many in the market to push back the timing of forecasts. You know, we keep getting this hawkish tone about whether or not we'll see this a potential rate hike in June, but that's been pushed back, possibly with the greenback above levels like $1.10 versus the euro. Perhaps at that point we'll see some sort of rate hike, and we're certainly far from that. If the Fed downplays the U.S. weakness this week and, you know, keeps a rate hike on the table, the dollar would have a better base, and we could see U.S. growth rebound in the second quarter, and of course in the next 4 or 5 months certainly have the same impact on other currencies. Now, some argue a strong dollar could actually slow momentum and push the first interest rate hike from the Federal Reserve to later this year. Once again, that would have a different type of impact on emerging market currencies.
Indeed. One final question for you, Miriam. Last week, Friday, Nigeria's central bank introduced a new set of measures to deal with non-performing loans. Are investors on your end concerned about a repeat of the 2009 crisis, given the fall in crude oil prices?
Well, you know, talking to a few investors on this end, there's mixed views on this, Rama, especially with new regulations in place whereby banks will give bad debtors 3 months to actually square up their accounts. Failure to do this will result in being barred from currency and government debt markets, and that certainly sets the tone moving forward. You know, many investors also agree with the central bank governor saying that Nigeria's government should consider selling down its majority stakes in things like joint ventures with multinational oil companies to shore up state finances and really raise funding for infrastructure development. That would also move the country's dependency away from oil revenues. Now, the key for the government and the central bank is really to avoid shoring up non-performing loans that we've seen in the last few years, of course, where the central bank has to rescue several banks that had lent mainly to the oil and gas sector and help support the currency.
Indeed, it should be interesting to see if Lamido Sanusi's reforms of the Nigerian banking sector will be overturned over the next couple of months. We'll leave it there for the time being. That's Miriam Bemard live in London. Let's make a quick run through markets here for you. A set of red numbers right across the board, except for South Africa. The market over there up by well over 9/10. Elsewhere, however, Red ink right across the board. Nigeria down by half a percentage point. The EGX 30 down by 1.6%. And the Nairobi 20 share index, of course, still treading water, but in negative territory, down by a tenth. Coming up next, crude production in Libya has suffered a setback given labor unrest at the El Feel oil field. We'll be in Cairo live as well. Central Bank of Egypt has essentially squeezed the life out of the black market for currencies. We'll be telling you why. Africa is on the move. It's home to 7 of the world's 10 fastest growing economies. We help you make sense of the fast-changing African business landscape. We take you where the business is happening.
Global Business, weekdays at this time on CCTV Africa.
This report by the African Green Revolution Alliance says climate change will slash food output. Within the next 30 years, the number of malnourished people in sub-Saharan Africa could jump nearly 40%.
Welcome back to the program. You're still watching Global Business Africa. Let's take it to Libya now. A strike by security guards over their salary payments has forced the closure of the Western El Feel oil field. On Saturday, a field engineer told Reuters the OPEC producer had shut down the field. Didn't cite a reason, however. El Feel is operated by a joint venture owned by the National Oil Corporation and Italy's Eni. Libya this year had managed to restart production at El Feel, which analysts say produced about 100,000 barrels of crude a day. Libya had to shut down the field late last year when a group in the Zintan region, which opposes a self-declared government in Tripoli, closed a pipeline. Now, the latest closure, of course, is likely to reduce national output to well under 500,000 barrels of crude a day. That's a third of the volume Libya used to pump in 2010 before an uprising toppled Muammar Gaddafi and sent the country nosediving into turmoil. Still in North Africa, global oil prices are causing quite a bit of havoc in the Algerian economy. The impact is being felt most by consumers and businesses. The country, of course, relies heavily on oil revenues, and economists say now this crisis should not be wasted. It's a time for Algeria to move away from its oil addiction.
Money from the country's oil revenue accounts for up to 97% of hard currency earnings and 60% of the government's budget. But the global fall in oil prices has put a significant dent in that income. Algeria once had currency reserves of $200 billion. These are slipping away as the government tries to maintain its spending on imports and subsidies. Bouala Mezoed, the manager of an IT equipment company, says doing business is becoming more difficult.
La dévaluation des prix du pétrole nous touche de plein fouet.
The drop in the value of oil exports has hit us hard, in as much as the cost of imported materials is going up, whereas we have to respect the prices set in our contracts to supply big businesses. We see also a lack of IT equipment on the market. The importers who supply us are expecting the value of the dinar to drop against the US dollar and the euro, and that puts us in a situation that is very difficult to manage.
Experts say the country needs to curb its spending and diversify its economy, but there appears to be no one able to make the necessary decisions. Opposition figures say President Abdelaziz Bouteflika is too sick to govern. The 78-year-old has presided over just 3 cabinet meetings since he was re-elected a year ago. Reda Amrani, an economist, says the economic problems could mean the emergence of new politicians with different ideas for running the country.
This crisis will shine a light on the real situation in the economy and will also push towards the emergence of properly competent management. The partisan political system will diminish in the middle of economic difficulties. It's going to take really competent governance of the economy. It's going to take someone special to see this ship safely through the storm.
He says some of the monetary policies taken by the authorities have been damaging to Algeria.
I think it's budgetary incompetence which has made us to try to systematically devalue the dinar in order to increase local currency tax revenues from oil. I think it has been folly as it penalizes the middle classes and the elites who can go abroad and sell their skills there.
US intelligence agencies say the country is vulnerable to unrest because of few job prospects for young people and rising threats along its desert borders. Since the beginning of the year, there have also been demonstrations in the desert south where the oil is located over plans to exploit shale gas reserves. Residents fear the adverse environmental effects on scarce water resources, despite the government badly needing an alternate source of income. Valdi Carolsa, CCTV.
Still in North Africa, Egypt's central bank has been waging quite the war on the currency black market for the last few months in order to help essentially regain control of the currency. Now, the currency black market has been a thorn in the side of successive governments. It's virtually disappeared, however, in the last 2 months, given this crackdown. Yasser Kim now looks at how Egypt managed to contain this black market and kill it altogether.
Falling national income, dwindling foreign reserves and weakened local pound. Some of the effects of the 2011 uprising. A ripe environment to breed a strong black market for hard currency. For 4 years, the dollar recorded over 30% increase in the unofficial market. At one point, the Egyptian pound fell by 5% in 3 days. The central bank had to intervene.
The central bank prevents you from depositing or withdrawing more than $10,000 daily or $50,000 a month. This led people to buy at the banks and not exchange offices. There is not so much transaction as before.
This coincided with a crackdown on exchange offices and black market traders. Hundreds were arrested and tens of offices were closed down.
The central bank governor is working fine and taking the right decisions. Importers should be allowed to bring in the basic necessities only. The governor is correct, but we should have a role too. How can the national bank give you a higher price than us?
What aided the government was a steady inflow of billions of dollars from the Gulf states and a slow rise in tourism levels. Foreign currency reserves this week reached $22 billion, the highest since 2011. But business community is worried.
Companies can't find dollars for production or import costs, so this must be addressed. But if we produce more and export more, we will get more dollars and we will not have a currency crisis.
In his latest statements on Monday, the central bank governor Hisham Ramiz announced that the black market is dead. He also adamantly refused to ease regulations on businesses, saying he expects the investments to increase now that the currency market has been stabilized. Yasser Hakim for CCTV, Cairo.
And Yasser Kim joins us now live from Cairo with more data on that particular story. Yasser, these measures taken by the Central Bank of Egypt have essentially limited businesses' ability to carry on with enterprise as usual. Isn't it harder for them to get letters of credit, for example, and to carry on day-to-day transactions?
Yes, it's not as easy as before. They need a lot of dollars to import or even to buy means of production, such as machinery, raw material. If they are a factory that's producing something, they need the raw material from abroad. If they're importing, they need money and letters of credit. But it's not coming as easy as before, because the government is trying to restrict the use of dollars. It's trying to use it only for necessary means. Not all products are allowed to be imported at this point, or even not at the same quantity. There has to be some kind of a letter to be sent to the central bank every time a businessman wants to import something or to buy something from abroad, and he needs that $10,000, more than $10,000. He cannot either deliver or deposit or withdraw more than $10,000 a day or $50 a month. So many are not able to do that, and they have to attend to the central bank with a letter calling for money to be submitted for them to buy, and which is slowing the process, obviously.
Indeed, and that does seem contradictory, the government's efforts of saying that we want to rejig growth across Egypt. But let's talk about dollar demand. Clearly, it's outpacing supply ever since these limits on deposits took effect. Does the central bank see this as a problem? And if so, what does the governor plan to do about it?
Yes, they see it as a problem, but not as a priority at this point, because the priority is to increase the foreign currency reserves to more green levels, if you can say, to be more away from the red. Also to provide enough money for the budget to buy necessary material and necessary goods. The government is auctioning dollars in the market to solve this problem according to what it sees the needs in the market of the hard currency, but it's not open now to anyone like before, to avoid the black market, to avoid money laundering, to avoid a lot of money that has been sent abroad after the 2011 uprising from businessmen or politicians, corrupt politicians. So it's trying to stop this at the point as a priority. Maybe it will ease procedures later on, but not now.
Indeed. One final question for you, Yasser. Food and energy are clearly getting preference at the central bank auctions, but that's clearly at the expense of everyone else. How are SMEs not in the food and not in the energy sectors coping?
If you're talking about, yes, food and energy are the priority. There are a lot of other products that the government deems as not necessary for the market. Toys, all kinds of products that cars, luxury cars, are not given a priority at this point. If you're buying a luxury car now, you have to wait for a while, a few months to receive it, because not because the shipment is not here, it's just because that the company cannot send the dollars abroad to get the car for you. So yes, the food and energy are on top of the list of products that the government offers auctions and offers companies the money to and hard currency to buy or produce. The others that just have to wait their turn in the line. Obviously, big factories and businesses that produce energy and produce products that are needed in the market are able to get the money they need. But importers, especially importers, are having a problem now, and the government says it's not a priority for the government at this point.
Indeed. We'll have to leave it there for the time being. Thank you very much for your input. That's Yasser Hakim live in Cairo. Let's make a quick run through commodity prices here for you. Brent crude prices still around $64, $65 a barrel of crude. Some interesting numbers and estimates coming out of Nigeria, however, on the assumption that crude prices average about $53 or so a barrel so far this year. The main producers of crude in Nigeria, Shell, ExxonMobil, Total, Eni, Chevron, through their umbrella group, that's the oil producers trade section, they say that government revenues will fall by about $10 billion a year. That's roughly 30%. Should make the job of governing and running the government in Nigeria just that much bit harder for the retired General Muhammadu Buhari. Coming up next, we'll be in Morocco. Farmers and experts are trading ideas on how better to grow these succulent, lovely fruits. All the details are coming up next.
To the world, it's a spectacular natural wonder. To Egypt, the River Nile means life itself.
These waters helped create an entire civilization. And the Nile has nurtured its people for thousands of years.
Following the Nile from the far south of Egypt out to the Mediterranean Sea.
Discover the sights, the stories, and the people of this incredible river.
Join CCTV for an unforgettable adventure.
The Nile, a journey of life, exclusive to CCTV.
Welcome back to the program. Let's head over to northwest Morocco. It's known for its fertile lands, the abundance of water, and proximity to Europe, which is its main fruit market. This year, the country is celebrating the 5th edition of its annual Strawberry Festival. It's an opportunity for producers, exporters, small farmers to meet up and learn about how best to grow these fruits and the latest techniques being used in the agricultural sector. Maria Galang has that story on Grassroots tonight.
It's strawberry time in Moulay Bousselham, a town in Morocco's Kenitra province. An annual festival is dedicated to the rosy fruit. The event is a showcase for the huge potential for the region to produce a variety of fruits such as strawberries, raspberries and blueberries.
Firstly, to make this region known, especially the Gab region at the national and international level. Also, to showcase its importance at an economic, touristic and cultural level. There is also a social aspect because the sector employs a lot of people.
While the quality of the strawberries produced by the local farmers is invariably high, the production is vulnerable to climatic changes. Long periods of frost or above average rain can seriously affect the crop.
The yield is decreasing every year, but the quality remains very high. The level of sweetness can reach 9 or even 10 points, while the average is 7 points. We reach the maximum, which is 10 points, which means excellent quality.
Both fresh and frozen Moroccan strawberries are exported to around 30 countries around the world, but the lion's share goes to Western Europe.
When we export to Europe in the months of January, February and March, the prices are good. But when we start exporting frozen strawberries, the prices drop.
Back at the festival, strawberries are handed out by 6-year-old Safia Massoudi, this year's newly elected Miss Strawberry. Massoudi was chosen among more than 100 girls in the region's schools. She will be the face of the industry and will take part in all activities and charity events in the region. Maria Galang, CCTV.
Quick run through the currencies here for you. We're keeping a very close eye on currencies in East Africa. Tanzania, of course, there's a bit of political risk coming through in that currency, and more importantly, Kenya as well. At some point, the local unit was down to about 94.50, 94.55 to the American dollar. The central bank is selling some dollars to the market, but not with a view of stabilizing the shilling. Technically, what they're doing is trying to smoothen out the volatility so that the ride down to around 95, 96 is a little easier. And that's it for this edition of the program. Thank you so much for watching. We'll always like hearing what you think about what we do around here. Send your feedback to globalbusinessafrica@cctv.com. And of course, when we're not on air, Facebook and Twitter are your ports of call. Thanks for watching. See you in 23 hours. I'm Ramanya.